Hey, I think a lot of you out there that follow my channel are already aware that I recently changed my everyday carry gun. I switched from my usual .357 Magnum revolver to a 1911 in .45 ACP. Now, I won't bore you again with why I did this, but let's just say it revolves mostly around getting old and feeble. Well, I made that change recently, and I let people know I was making the change. Now, a lot of people said, well, yeah, but you change your everyday carry like most people change their underwear. And that's really not the case. I've pretty much carried either a 686/586 or a Chiappa Rhino for years. It's pretty much been my primary carry gun for many years. But people see me carry other things and they think, well, that means you changed your EDC. No, I run a YouTube channel. I have to test things. I'm not someone that'll just get a gun in on loan, shoot it for a day, and do a review on it. If I'm going to test a gun, specifically if I'm going to test a gun about carrying, a gun that's a carry gun, I'm going to carry it for a week or two first. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to carry it full time. So people will see me like post on Instagram or something that I'm testing this gun this week and I'm carrying it in this holster, and they'll think that means I changed my EDC. It doesn't. A lot of times while I'm testing something, if I have to go somewhere that I think I might, want to be well prepared, I'll still put on my EDC to go do that. But I have to carry the gun I'm testing enough to be able to say whether it's a good carry gun or not. How easily it carries, etc. Whether it bumps into things, you know what I'm talking about. So that doesn't mean I change my EDC very often. I just test a lot of guns, but I have always gone back to my everyday carry being, and it's never really changed my everyday carry from being either, like I said, a 686, 586, or a Chiappa Rhino for a while. But now I carry the 1911 in .45 ACP. And what I want to make this video today to tell people is I'm changing it again. I actually am changing my EDC now because this has been my EDC, my Sig Sauer STX, and I really, really like this gun. It's an awesome gun. Shoots great, just has every feature on it I want, but I'm going to change it. And what am I changing it to? Well, I'm changing it to this. Another my .45 ACP 1911, my Dan Wesson Specialist. Now you might be saying, well, why change to such a similar gun? Well, it's because I'm not really making a change so much. I'm just going to a gun that I think is a little bit better. I've told people for a long time, never let price be a factor when it comes to your carry gun. If the best gun you shoot is the most expensive gun you own, carry the most expensive gun you own, because your life is worth way more than any gun, especially the life of one of your family members is worth more than any gun. And so I thought, I might as well take my own advice. If this gun is a little bit better than the STX, I should carry this gun regardless of the price. And I actually do like this gun better than the STX and do shoot it a little bit better than the STX. So let's go ahead and take a look at them both side by side, and I think you'll understand why I made the change. First, let's take a minute or two here to look at what these guns have in common. They both have rear serrations, no front serrations. I'm not the biggest fan of front serrations. I'm okay with them, but I don't seek them out because I'm not a big press check guy. They both have nice beaver tail safeties with the little bump outs on the bottoms here. I like those a lot better. They seem to be a lot easier to activate. They both have night sights. They both have medium reach triggers. They both have front and rear serrations on the grip. They both have ambi safeties. They both have skeletonized triggers. They both have mag wells, and they are both all stainless steel construction. So they have a lot of similarities, but there are some differences that make me really like the Specialist better than the STX. Now, before we get into the differences real quick, there was one more similarity I wanted to show you. They both do have serrations on the top. Now, the one on the Sig is engraved into the top of the slide, and they're polished, so they're not so great because you don't want shiny on top of your gun. Whereas on the Dan Wesson, they're actually raised. They actually have a ridge that runs down the back. They're like a ridgeback gun. So those are a little different, and I like the ones on the Dan Wesson quite a bit better. They reduce glare better, and they look better. Now, one difference you can see between the two of them right away is that this one has a skeletonized trigger and this one has a solid trigger. I actually prefer the skeletonized trigger, but it's easy to put a skeletonized trigger on this gun. In fact, I can take this one out of here and put it on this gun. Very little problem whatsoever. So even though I like this trigger better, the actual physical trigger, I'm okay with this one. Another difference you'll notice between these two guns is that the Specialist has a rail and the Sig Sauer has no rail. I'm not liking the rail better because it's more tactical and I can stick stuff on it. I just like it because it adds a little extra weight to the front of the gun, makes the gun balance a little bit better. That's why I do like rails on 1911s. Now let's look at the sights. The sights on the Sig Sauer are fully adjustable in the rear. It actually has adjustments for windage, elevation, etc. Now let's look at the sights on the Dan Wesson. They're both driftable, but they're not fully adjustable. And this one here has a flat little ledge on it, so they're a little bit different than the ones on the Sig. So I like the sights better on the Specialist for two main reasons. Like I said, these are fully adjustable. I think that fully adjustable sights on a carry gun are often a trouble because sometimes they get out of adjustment, whereas a fixed sight won't. I like just a driftable sight on the rear and the front. And plus, the sight on this gun is a little lower profile and it has a ledge here. So if I ever had to rack on the edge of a table or something like that, this would actually do that. So I like the sights on the Specialist better. Now let's look at extractors. The Sig Sauer has an external extractor. It does still have a little plug back here where the internal extractor would be to hold all the parts in place, but it definitely has an external extractor. The Sig Sauer has an internal extractor. The only part of it you actually see is that little plug on the back. That one just isn't for looks or holding in parts. That's the actual extractor. Now, as far as the two extractors go, I really don't have a huge preference. I know a lot of people do, but I don't. I really don't care internal or external extractor, although it is easier to tune an internal extractor, which I doubt I'll be doing much of, but just in case I ever had to, it's nice to know I can. So I like the internal extractor for that reason only, but like I said, I'd take or leave either one of them. Now let's look at the guide rods. The Sig Sauer has a full-length guide rod. Now, I didn't come with a full-length guide rod. I put one in there myself, but I did that after I bought it and did it before I started carrying it, so the one I was carrying had a full-length guide rod, so I'm showing you it with the full-length guide rod. The Dan Wesson, pardon it being a little dirty here, we went to the range earlier, has a GI guide rod. So it just has the standard GI guide rod, not a full-length guide rod, but I could change that. Now, I don't really have much of a preference between the two types of guide rods. In fact, I almost kind of like the full lengths better because they add a little weight to the front of the gun. It's just a little bit, but it's noticeable. So I kind of like the full lengths better, even though this one has a GI guide rod, but I can always change this one to a full length guide rod. I could just take the GI guide rod out of this one and put the one from this one, the full length one from this one, in this one. It's a Wilson Combat anyway, so I could just stick it over here in the Dan Wesson. Now let's look at the safeties on both guns. The Sig has a very slim profile ambi safety on it right here. Nice slim profile. Now the Dan Wesson is a little bit bigger. It has a much larger ambi safety. It's thicker, it's wider, it's a lot easier to get your fingers on. Now when it comes to these two safeties, I like the bigger safety better. I know that might surprise some people. Some people like the low profiles. I like the bigger ones better. Not just because they're thicker and stronger. These are actually made out of bar stock, but also because they're easier to manipulate. These are very solid. These are very positive. You definitely feel them go on and off, and you feel it very easily, but it's still easy to work them because it's larger. So there can be actually more resistance and it still be comfortable to take them on and off because you have that larger paddle. These aren't as positive because of that littler paddle. You wouldn't be able to get them off as easily if they were really stiff. Plus, the bigger ones here, they give you a nice platform for your thumb on the other side for your strong hand thumb. So I actually like the bigger safeties a lot better. Now let's look at the serrations on both guns. Both guns do have rear serrations, but they are a little bit different. As you can see, rear serrations on the Dan Wesson here, but like I said, not quite like the ones on the Sig. Now the serrations on both guns are fine. These are more of a standard serration. This is a little flashier. They're wavy cut and they're polished. Don't really prefer one or the other. I think this one looks cleaner, but if you bead blasted this slide down, this would look a lot cleaner too. Now let's look at fit. The Sig Sauer is machine fit. It's all machine made, so it's a little bit looser. The tolerances aren't quite as good, and everything doesn't match up quite as well as it does on the other gun. As you can see on the Dan Wesson, the tolerances are much tighter. Everything is flush. There's no little pieces sticking out. It's just a far better fit gun because it's fit by hand, not machine. So as you can see, there's just no contest when it comes to fit. The Dan Wesson is just so much better. Now, it's not going to make it more reliable. The Sig is very reliable also, but it's going to make everything you do, racking the slide, everything you do, just a little bit smoother, a little bit crisper, and a little bit cleaner. So when it comes to fit, the Dan Wesson is just leaps and bounds ahead of the Sig Sauer. Now finally, let's look at the triggers on the two guns. This is where there's a big difference, not a huge difference, but enough of a difference to really matter to me. If you look at the trigger on the Sig, it's not quite as smooth. It's a little bit clunkier and a little bit heavier. Right at 4 pounds 9 ounces, by no means a heavy trigger, but still not the lightest trigger. The Dan Wesson's trigger is much smoother and it's lighter. It's just a little bit shorter and cleaner. Now it is a Series 70 gun, whereas the other gun's a Series 80, so that explains a lot of it. But when you pull this trigger, you'll really notice the difference, especially how much pressure it takes to cause that break. 3 pounds 2 ounces. Now tell me that's not a great trigger. So in the end, that better trigger along with that better fit, that just makes this the better gun. I shoot it better. It's easier to stay on target. It's just as reliable as this gun, but it's a little bit smoother. It's a little bit crisper. It's just a little bit better overall. Not a lot better. If you're rating these guns on a scale from 1 to 10 each, this would probably be like a 9.2 and this would be a 9.4. So it's not a big difference, but that little bit of extra difference does matter. That's why I choose this one. This here, the Dan Wesson Specialist, as my new everyday carry.